Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I could maybe add a sentence, which is that I am sorry that I couldn't prevent the losses.
I like that you say that, to be honest, but I don't know how to put it back in. You said fine. You want to?
You can ask me again. Are you sorry?
Hello, and welcome to another interview. Today, I am joined by Thailand's 27th Prime Minister, Mr. Abhisit Vejjajiva. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Between March and May of 2010, dozens of protesters were killed and thousands more injured under your administration. You supported an independent investigation that unfortunately failed. Since then, this incident has stained your legacy. Are you sorry?
It's a regrettable turn of events. I think we tried our best to handle something which I think is unprecedented, which is you have a situation of mass protest where there were elements of armed people, which of course escalated things from 10th of April right through to May. And what I tried to do, of course, were a number of things, like actually directly negotiating with the leaders of the protests. I offered to dissolve the House with a clear date. And after the events ended, no amnesty, but setting up an independent commission in order to find out the truth. I wouldn't say that the commission had failed as such. Its work actually obviously went on beyond my tenure as Prime Minister, but the subsequent government decided not to accept the report that it did. While of course I went through a couple of cases, one through the courts and one through the National Counter-Corruption Commission, which cleared myself and a couple of other people, it still remains true that there should continue to be process in order to bring people to account, at least to do justice to those people who have lost their loved ones.
You and Deputy Prime Minister Suthep were indicted for murder and then acquitted, but that was because of the jurisdiction of the court, not because of evidence brought against you. So if it's not you, who should be held responsible?
Well, I think that case twisted the whole procedure, because what they should have done was they had initial investigations on certain incidents, because this was covering a period of about 2 months. And instead of pursuing the details that had already been gathered for the investigations, the then government decided to prosecute just me and Kun Suthep Thaksin Shinawatra, then Deputy Prime Minister in my government. And then they came up with the charges of murder. What they should have done was, of course, to pursue the investigations by the National Counter-Corruption Commission, because I was acting as Prime Minister, whether that was an abuse of power, which led to the loss of lives. That case was cleared by the National Counter-Corruption Commission, which in its ruling said also what I just said to you, which was they should still pursue the details of the incidents that led to the losses, so that they can bring people to account.
So to the question, who do you think should be held responsible?
Well, you need to look at each incident and see whether the people who caused those deaths or losses were following orders, or was it an accident or whatever. Because there are, I think, some details emerging from some of the cases where you can make that kind of conclusion. And so it's difficult for me to point a finger at somebody, but I think each death, each loss should have been investigated and see exactly what happened. And then you can get the answer as to who should be held accountable. And obviously I had no objections to it, because I never attempted to pass an amnesty for anybody. And if you recall, the Yingluck government proposed a law to grant blanket amnesty, which I opposed.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I could maybe add a sentence, which is that I am sorry that I couldn't prevent the losses.
I like that you say that, to be honest, but I don't know how to put it back in. You said fine. You want to?
You can ask me again. Are you sorry?
So every year, victims or families of the victims come out to memorialize their loss, and I'm wondering, don't you feel that it may be easier just to say sorry?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I couldn't prevent the losses of the loved ones of so many people. It was never our intention to have anybody killed. Actually, what we were trying to do was to prevent violence as much as possible.
Okay. This interview is possible with thanks to SAC Gallery and Amanda Phingbodhipakkiya. In this work, Amanda explores yellow as the living pulse of resilience that runs through generations of unseen hands. The hue of endurance, a chromatic testament to survival and humble beginnings. Materials that hold memory. Reclaimed bamboo, raw silk and copper honor the invisible labor of caregivers, healers, and harvesters. It turns away from grand histories to celebrate a different kind of power. The ancestral wisdom found in quiet rituals and resilient gestures, passed down through generations otherwise overlooked by history. I'm honored to be here, sharing space with this impactful work. To learn more about the gallery, this exhibition, and owning a piece of this history, links to the gallery and Amanda's work are both in the description below. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the interview. Following a leaked phone call between Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra and Cambodian leader Hun Sen, the border and the country has been destabilized. What are your thoughts on the content of the leaked phone call?
There are obviously serious charges against the Prime Minister, which is very understandable. I think it's very rare for a leader of a country to call somebody in your own armed forces, the opposite side, during a time of conflict, to offer the other side almost anything that they ask for without actually making a single request or demand on behalf of the Thai side. I'm not surprised that there are strong sentiments. What would have been best to, as you say, stabilize the situation was perhaps for the Prime Minister to take responsibility straight away and for the Parliament to elect the next candidate from the Pheu Thai party so that the coalition could go on.
Do you think that the lawfare against her, which may see her expelled, is democratic or fair?
I think there are two separate issues there. First, do we think what she has done is a serious offense? It is bordering on being treasonous. But the way things have been pursued here, people have opted to go to the Constitutional Court. And so this brings back to a separate issue as to whether we should have a Constitutional Court ruling on ethics, something which is often dubbed lawfare. Ideally, we don't think it is appropriate for the courts to rule on ethical issues. But we understand why these provisions are put in, and that's simply because of the failure of other mechanisms in the past, political mechanisms, be it the person taking accountability, be it the party taking its members, including its leader, to account like in many other countries, be it a parliamentary ethics committee of some kind, which would function without bias. None of this seems to have worked in the past, which is why it's put into the Constitution. Now, once it's in the Constitution, and once you have the law for it, and you have guidelines about what constitutes an ethical violation, well, nobody can be above the law. And so you're in a difficult situation. So I keep saying jokingly that the whole problems here in the country is that we have people bad at writing laws, but very good at breaking them.
Considering all of that, though, would you say that right now the current government is collapsing?
I think it is struggling. It struggled for a number of reasons. Its majority obviously has been cut substantially by the withdrawal of the Phum Chai Thai party following Thaksin's demand of the Interior Ministry. But also because this court case is pending, and the majority of people I've talked to believe that it's going to be very difficult for her to get away with it. So it looks like the current coalition's days numbered. But as I said, if the day comes when the court rules that she is guilty, then Parliament still has a number of choices to elect a Prime Minister. And the most natural one would be a candidate from the Pheu Thai party, which is the biggest party in the coalition.
So in terms of the general population, the voters, they want to know, is there a crisis happening right now? Is there a crisis on the way? And considering your experience in government, do you feel that this is the making of a crisis, that people should be worried?
I think so long as things are proceeding according to the laws, to the Constitution, and as I said, because we still have this choice of prime ministerial candidates, including one from the current leading coalition party, it doesn't have to be a crisis. I think it's only when Parliament begins to find difficult choosing somebody, or in the worst case, I guess if there is some kind of deadlock where the parties could not agree, then there would be some kind of crisis. But then again, the People's Party, the opposition, had already made its offer that it would not allow that to happen. It would be willing to elect somebody without having to join the government, on the condition that that leader proceeds with the constitutional amendments and call early elections. So at the moment, I see no reason why we would hit a dead end, that there would be a deadlock that would then lead to some kind of extra constitutional crisis.
So in the same vein, though, in terms of resigning and paving way for a new election, dissolving the parliament, you actually refused to resign in 2010. So what I'm wondering is,
in
what's
2010,
the
the demand was for me to dissolve the House.
Yeah.
And I actually set a date, giving them reasons why we needed a bit more time, but that offer was refused. And in the end, I also dissolved the House once the constitutional amendments were completed. So, I mean, I kept my word. Actually, I said at the beginning of my term, quite clearly too, that I wasn't going to stay the full term, and I kept my words.
Was that because you knew that you weren't going to stay a full term, or because it's not usual?
Because I felt that I came into power under rather exceptional circumstances. I didn't win the elections. The party that did win had two prime ministers who were subsequently disqualified, and there was a defection from the leading party. And I felt that at the time there were a twin crisis, if you like, one concerning the impact from the global financial crisis, and the other from the internal politics. And I felt that if we could somehow resolve those to a certain extent, then it would be a good time to go back for the people to have their say.
So on the same note, you've said many times in previous interviews and after coups that power should be returned to the people.
Yes.
And again, reiterating what you just said, you rose to power through non-democratic methods, or a combination of non-democratic methods.
Well, I'm not sure if that's the right characterization.
Okay, boycotting the election.
Well, I have to ask you whether Kun Sethha came into power according to democratic?
No.
Well, it's probably clearer because you had the Senate who were not elected having a say. But in my case, it was all MPs deciding that it was time for change within that parliament. It's something that's not unusual in a number of parliamentary democracies in the world, where the second biggest party had a shot at forming a government. When my name was put up for parliament to vote, the person who was competing with me was from a party even smaller. And the biggest party decided not to field their own candidate. So it's a decision of the majority of parliament. But because, as I said, it's under exceptional circumstances, it wasn't a direct mandate from the people, if that's what you're after. Therefore, I had offered that I wouldn't stay the full term.
I wouldn't say that I was after a direct mandate for the people. What I'm more curious about is whether or not boycotting the elections and the ensuing, you could call them crises, were part of a democratic function.
Around the world, boycotting of elections usually happen when political parties decided that there was something wrong with the electoral process. And I think we were proved right, because the Election Commission at that time was later found guilty of not being impartial. And the boycotting of elections, I know at that time people accused of contributing to the coup. But you should also remember that after the boycotted elections were found to be illegitimate, a new one was called. And we didn't boycott it, we participated, and then the coup happened. So it wasn't because at the time of the coup, any party was boycotting elections. We were all participating in it.
I think the reason that I brought up boycotting elections too is because you had planned to boycott the election again in 2014, right?
Yeah, I have, no, we boycotted again. And again, you could go through the sequences of events. I have to say that the boycotting in 2014 were rather different from the earlier one. The earlier one, actually, nobody had been familiar with this idea of boycotting elections. But in 2014, I have to say that unlike the previous occasion, there was hardly any debate within the party. And when we decided, it's all up to all the MPs in the party. The first time, there was almost a 50-50 split. We debated the whole day about whether it would be the right thing to do. But in 2014, I was myself a bit surprised that it was almost unanimous. Maybe only one or two people disagreed. So the boycott then took place. But the last minute before the coup happened, I was trying to say to the Pheu Thai party what I've been saying to a lot of other people before that we should try to prevent a coup. And one way to do that was maybe if they had resigned from the prime ministership, there could be some arrangements for a transition towards elections. Again, that was turned down by the Pheu Thai party. Kun Jatuporn, who was then the leader of the Red Shirts at the time, subsequently revealed that he believed that in the end, even Kun Thaksin wanted the coup to happen. So it certainly wasn't me. I remember talking to the Pheu Thai people and said, look, you need to step back a little. We are not demanding any kind of power. We just wanted a transitional arrangement before we go back to elections where everybody, the public that is satisfied that there would be fair elections, meaningful elections, so that we can take this forward. And I again should point out to a number of countries where when there are crises, maybe not exactly the same kind of crisis, it isn't unusual for people from political parties to step aside for some kind of transitional government in order to take things forward.
It seems that a lot of what you say and a lot of your work, for better or worse, has been somewhat of a power struggle between you and former Premier Thaksin Shinawatra. How much of your decision-making is based on that relationship that you have?
No, I think you have to separate our role in the opposition, which is naturally something that it's part of your job to offer an alternative point of view. But a good reason to say that my decisions when I was in power was not based on this is because a number of policies in the Thaksin government were either continued or improved or in some cases stopped because I consider them on their merits. So for instance, his greatest achievement is the universal healthcare coverage. Actually, what we did was to try to plug in all the financial gaps that he'd left behind, which the government of Kun Prayut actually was probably the first to try to plug that gap. And also actually improved on some of the aspects of that project. The OTOP carried on with certain adjustments, but policies that I felt weren't beneficial were stopped. So everything would be treated on its merit, not because it was initiated by Thaksin or Thaksin-supported government. An example of a policy I stopped was the rice pledging scheme, because already we identified that as something that will cause a lot of damage to the fiscal position, as well as opening up opportunities for corruption.
So do you see this current moment as the end of what some would call the Shinawatra political dynasty?
Well, if you call it a dynasty, it hasn't obviously been as strong as it was 20 years back. But the Pheu Thai is still an important force in politics. Actually, Pheu Thai could have built on its achievements, and it's always held back by its tie to the family and allow itself to be dominated by the family. We saw in the case of Prime Minister Sethar, who initially didn't appoint Kun Pichet as minister, but then I guess under subsequent pressure, he gave in, which led to his removal. He was then replaced by somebody who is obviously part of the family. Many people feel that she doesn't have the experience and obviously has been dominated by her father through a series of public statements as well, not just what's going on behind the scene. And they haven't been able to deliver according to the expectations that people, including their supporters, have had. So the strength 20 years ago was all about a good economy. The last couple of years, we've hardly seen an improvement. And with latest controversies surrounding how the border issue or how relations with Cambodia had been handled, that seems to have dealt a big blow to the Pheu Thai party in terms of its popularity.
Is there a Pheu Thai party? The idea of Pheu Thai party, is it at all independent of the Shinawatra family? Because you're going back and forth on this.
Is there?
You're talking about the Shinawatra family, but you're conflating it a bit with the Pheu Thai party.
Well, because I think Pheu Thai has an opportunity in terms of building on its achievements in the past. And I'm saying that they have missed those opportunities because they have given way to the requests or the demands of the Shinawatra family, which is leading it to its decline.
The People's Party, a progressive movement, won the 2023 elections, but have failed to get ahead since. Why?
Well, I think they're making a lot of progress. Everybody that you talk to in Thailand, if you ask them who's going to win the next elections, I think everybody would probably say that the People's Party is in the best position to get the most seats. So it's not as if they haven't made progress. They have. The problem is people still find it hard to believe that other parties will join its government, and therefore the idea that they can win an absolute or outright majority right now might be just a little too far. But it's gaining support. They're winning a lot of battles on ideas, so that even if they're not in government, they have been able to dictate some of the agenda even in parliament. So you might think about the equal rights marriage law, deregulation on alcohol.
That's not what I'm thinking about, to be honest. To the point, do you support...
No, that's the progress that they've made,
okay,
right? But of course, they would clearly want to be in government. And that's still quite a tall order in the sense that they either have to win an outright majority, or they're going to have to be a bit clearer about what kind of parties would join them in a coalition.
It seems that the core of one of their major issues has been, and this is my question to you, do you support the progressive movement's bid to reform Section 112 by the parliamentary process?
You know, the talk of reforming Section 112 began in my government, but the problem, I think, has been the differences in tones. Because despite what we said and what we did as a first step, which was to identify that the real problem is more about enforcement and interpretation of the law rather than the law itself, so that I formed an ad hoc advisory committee to look into the 112 cases, and was able then to give reassurance to the police, to the Attorney General, that they needn't pursue some cases against academics who were expressing their points of view, against foreign journalists, and charges were dropped, differentiating those kinds of cases from what would be a clear violation of Section 112. Now, I did that. Nobody ever accused me of not being loyal to the monarchy. I think the problem with the movement in recent years has been its tone and the way it's been conducted. And I thought that the amendments that they proposed, which led to the disbanding of the Move Forward Party, I thought those amendments were rather poorly written, and because of certain provisions, allow people to interpret it as undermining the monarchy rather than reforming the section to improve upon the enforcement of the law. We should be able to discuss these issues, and I think some amendments may be appropriate, but there certainly wouldn't be the same kind of amendments that we saw the Future Forward or the Move Forward submitted.
So in terms of the things that you did as Prime Minister and then things that we are still legislating in Parliament, do you feel that people charged with Section 112 should have been included in the current amnesty bill?
Again, my suggestion to the committee on amnesty before they drafted the law was really to sort out this issue on its own. And that is to say that it would make sense to begin to look at some cases and again say clearly that this was most likely an abuse or misuse or politically motivated cases, and therefore I think these people should be eligible to apply or be granted an amnesty. Whereas there are some clear violations of 112, and I think that for them, that the route should have been for them to seek a royal pardon.
Okay, switching gears.
So I need to say this, and you know, people can be frustrated these days. Why not give a short answer? Yes, no. I think that's the real problem now with a lot of issues here in this country. A lot of these problems need solutions which are moderate, detailed, not jumping to one side or the other. And unless we have the patience and the willingness to discuss this in detail, we'll keep going around in circles, where we jump from one extreme to another and find that we can't get the right balance.
Former Premier General Prayut Chan-o-cha could become the next Prime Minister. Do you support this?
Well, my own interpretation is that he shouldn't be qualified because he has already taken up the role of Privy Councillor. But I don't know how they would interpret the law. In the past, some of the interpretations I disagreed with. For instance, when somebody submitted that he should have been disqualified last time because he was a state official. I thought he was clearly a state official, but the court determined that he was not. But notwithstanding that, Prayut would be a choice that the Pheu Thai need to decide whether they wanted to accept. The reason being that the People's Party won't accept it. So Prayut can only head a coalition with Pheu Thai as a majority coalition partner. Now, Pheu Thai had already, to the eyes of a number of people, sort of betrayed the voters by setting up the current configuration or the previous configuration of government under Kun Sethar and subsequently with Paetongtarn. Would they have the stomach to do it again? They might feel that if it is necessary to hang on to power and to have a rather steady and stable government until the next elections, they may feel it's worth it. And if they decided to do that, and if the court decided that that was legal, then, you know, that's where we would probably be heading.
Do you think that he would be able to stabilize the situation as is?
He can stabilize the government. But when you say stabilize the situation of the country, I would just have to say that for me, we don't want any extra constitutional changes. And with the majority of parties not willing to go to early elections, all that we can ask for is for a government stable enough to complete its term. Having said that, I'm one of those people who had been frustrated for quite some time now that the current configuration and the way governments are set up, certainly in this parliament, simply cannot meet the challenges that the country faces in terms of the structural issues that need to be addressed in order to lift us out of this economic trap that we fell into for quite some time now. So it is frustrating, but because the way things have been evolving, the best you can hope for is, well, maybe the next elections will give us a government that can have the strength and the mandate and the willingness to tackle the issues that matter.
And at the appearance of it, a lot of people feel that having a military general being in the government again is not what they want. So my question to you is, do you see an end to military interference or involvement in Thai
you have
politics?
to make a difference between somebody who is no longer part of the army. You can't just disqualify somebody because of his old job. But if he, meaning General Prayut, comes in under the circumstances that we discussed, he needs to be treated as a politician, and he needs to take the kind of accountability and takes on the responsibility of any other politician. No exception should be.
Should the military be politicians?
Well, if people decided that it was appropriate, so for instance, you look at Indonesia, they decided that somebody from the army should be their president. It's the people's choice. So, as I said, now we have a parliamentary system. If the majority of MPs decided that they should choose him, because he was also put up as a prime minister or candidate during the elections, then we would have to respect that choice. As I said, I don't have much expectations or hope for the rest of the term of this parliament, because I don't think any serious issues that the country is facing will be tackled.
Okay, so speaking of which, you regularly give inconclusive answers about your future in politics. You recently told me that you'd only return as a Democrat. Is the current Democrat Party salvageable?
Well, whoever inherits the party after the current leadership goes is going to have a monumental job of recovering the party and getting it to gain popularity. But I've been clear right from the start in my political career that I will only have one political party. And despite all its faults today, if it were possible for me to get back, it would only prove that the Democrat Party is still an institution of some kind, where only membership can determine its future. It does not belong to a person or a group of people.
So is it salvageable?
I think there is still some basic support for what the Democrats stood for. We began as a liberal democratic party. We're still I say we, I'm no longer a member, but the Democrat Party, and certainly under my leadership, was a very active party in the family of political parties in this region, which is called the Council of Asian Liberal and Democrats. We take seriously the issue of corruption, and we believe in the basic working of a free market economy, and the government has the role of addressing social justice. I think there is still a market for that. But because of the things that the party had done over the last few years, many people felt we had departed from those principles. If we can convince that we really do adhere to those principles, I think it's still possible to pick up some support. I have no illusions that it would be as powerful a force as it once was, but at least if we could recover it to that stage, maybe it's up to the next generation of leadership to then carry on.
So to be clear, some of your former allies have already defected from the party for one reason or another.
And I'm sure many of them, if not all, will go back.
If you came back?
No, not if I came back, but if the current leadership is gone and they believe that whoever comes and runs it would stick to the principles that I've mentioned, I think there will be many, many people rejoining the Democrat Party. But having said that, we all have political burdens from the past. So the real challenge, of course, is getting fresh people in and tapping into the support of the younger generations.
The household debt to GDP ratio in Thailand is at about 90%, which ranks quite high.
We're in the top 10.
Yeah. So does this metric indicate an economic crisis now or in the near future?
It certainly highlights one of the symptoms of the Thai economy. And I think it's important to recognize too that we're in the top 10, as I said. But not only that, if you look at the other countries in the top 10, They're all rather rich countries, and their debt profile would be mostly about mortgages for houses, assets, and so on, whereas quite a lot of the substantial portion of our household debts would be actually consumption loans. So getting to grips with this particular problem is tricky. On the one hand, I think it's not so difficult for people who had to depend on maybe loan sharks or high interest loans to just have an opportunity to do business. For them, you can almost refinance them in some way. But the more difficult issue is the consumption loans part. There, I think in the longer term, nothing will beat financial literacy for most people so that they can manage their finances. But it's only one of the symptoms. I think it's clear that, number one, the economy has underperformed for quite some time. Its growth is lower than its historical records. I mean, in my days, any leader talking about a 2%, 3% growth would probably be booed off the stage. Now, 2-3% might find people saying, oh, that's okay, or that's respectable under circumstances. Secondly, it's also one of the lowest in the region. And thirdly, it's clearly, I mean, everybody feels it's certainly under our potential. And that suggests that the problem is not a cyclical one. It's not one that asks for a short-term fix, like a quick stimulus, whether it's in a digital wallet or that you can somehow think of some kind of big mega project. Just the land bridge or a casino will solve this. No, it's clearly structural. It's clearly about competitiveness and also the changing world. The solutions will lie in some of the more difficult issues. For me, the two biggest issues and should be the priorities are first the regulatory environment. Our laws, our regulations have become an obstacle for new businesses, new meaning not just somebody beginning to do business, but also businesses related to the new sectors, the growth drivers of today. They need to be revamped, not just amended here and there, so that people have this regulatory certainty or comfort of coming here. I think if you ask foreign investors, especially in the new sectors, their biggest concern is this. Number two is their concern would be about whether we have people with the right skills. And so a big reskilling program is needed. And for me also, one shortcut, if you like, is really trying to import talents. And so I would say that, we talk a lot about soft power and people thinking about, selling what we have abroad. In fact, we should use that power because I still believe that for so many people around the world, this is a place where they would like to live. They like a lot of things about Thailand. Use that to draw the talents. I'm always surprised that so many governments now try to attract people with money. I want to attract people with talent.
Are you suggesting immigration reform?
Yes, I do. And even on the unskilled side, we are struggling to find Thais doing a number of jobs. And we already have, I don't know, what's your estimate of Myanmar workers here, but it's huge. And it doesn't make sense to pretend that they're not here and to make them live in a way that is always subject to uncertainty or even abuse of authority by government officials. It really is time to reform that.
Okay, so taxation is lopsided right now.
Sure, that's the next thing is, apart from the growth rate, the degree of inequality in terms of wealth, in terms of income, and it just makes no sense that, so many people now expect that they should have a good welfare system, safety nets of some kind, and pretend that we can have that when we collect 13-14% of GDP in taxes.
Well, here's my question to you, is that the middle class says that it's unfair.
It is, because they're the ones that are fully taxed, whereas the others get away with it.
So what is the fix to the taxation system as it is?
Well, there are a number of steps. We don't want to get too technical, but the tax exemptions in income tax usually work for the rich at the moment, not the poor. And so we're losing a lot of revenues from that. Secondly, there are taxes on assets that are not being fully utilized or leveraged. We can have more earmarked indirect taxes so that we maybe channel money into issues like an aging population. And we should also simplify taxes in a way that would allow for the tax base to be widened. So basically, a comprehensive tax reform package is needed.
So do you think that it's fair, for example, for a lot of people feel that they are paying for this 20 baht electric train scheme and that they don't live in Bangkok? And it's only benefiting people in Bangkok.
Right. I think there are two things here. A number of services, we should make choices clear. Do we want taxpayers to pay or do we want the users to pay? And if we feel that there are some users who deserve some kind of support, should we then target the support just to those people rather than provide a blanket subsidy for people to people who don't need it too in terms of government services like the SkyTrain or whatever? But there are also other services which we should feel or we should treat as basic rights. So education, health. I think in that case, it's fair to say that we collect taxes to provide it to everybody.
Okay, so you briefly touched on this earlier, but I want to get a clear yes or no if I can. Do you support the entertainment complex bill?
I would support an entertainment complex without a casino, which is for me very possible. I see so many theme parks, concert halls around the world that are not dependent on casino revenues. And I'm sure that if you offer the prime area of Bangkok near the river with the kind of conditions that people speculate will be offered to a casino, I'm sure those businesses will come.
Why do you hate the casino?
Because for one thing, the state of law enforcement, which you've already touched upon, is so poor here that we would be repeating the mistakes of so many countries where it becomes a place for money laundering and attracts even more criminal activities like we've seen already around the border of Thailand. You know, people talk about all the scam centers. Have you noticed that they're all situated alongside casinos? And they cite the example of Singapore as a success. But if you look at the number of tourists coming into Thailand compared to Singapore over the years that the casino has been open in Singapore, we've done better. We're not a country that needs a casino to draw people in. So I just don't think it's worth it. And it also, and this has already been brought to attention, this will affect also Chinese tourists in Thailand because for China, it's illegal for their people to gamble even outside their country.
So all of that set aside though, can you acknowledge or would you deny that the gambling aspect of an entertainment complex would help the economy?
I don't think it helps much. The reason is this. Number one, as I said, we're going to talk about attracting sort of net tourists, the ones that wouldn't have come without a casino. I don't think that's a great number. Number two, the revenue we get from this is basically the taxes we collect from the casino that makes a living from people losing money there. So I don't see that as a big plus for the economy. And there's also confusion about the government policy because I know that the people planning to come here to set up a casino want 80% of their revenues to come from locals, whereas the government is still pretending that they can have a provision like only people with 50 million baht in their accounts can go into these places. So it doesn't add up.
On tourism, you mentioned the Chinese tourists. It is in sharp decline for many reasons, which is it's impacting the livelihoods of millions of Thais. What are the most immediate steps that the government can take to improve this?
I think we need to talk to the Chinese government and be open about what the problem is. If you ask the Chinese who come here or that in China, they will say that it's a safety issue because there's so many stories, clips going around social media about people coming here, getting kidnapped, have their kidneys removed or whatever. The Chinese government, if it were to encourage people to come here, I'm sure they can control that message. They have no problems controlling messages to the people there. And I think we can see from what's happened this year that the Chinese government does express its displeasure at the way we've dealt with issues like the scam centers that we talked about earlier. And maybe even also a bit of displeasure about how it's now easy for Thais to blame so-called grey Chinese for everything that's going wrong, even the collapsed building of the Auditor General. So I think the government needs to talk to the Chinese government because after all, I mean, this is supposed to be a golden year, right? The 50th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between Thailand and China. And yet what we see is a very sharp decline. We're still waiting for the new Chinese ambassador to come in. It's very odd.
Thailand struggles with systemic corruption. It is a part of everyday life here. Why does corruption thrive in Thailand?
It's the same. It's the other side of the coin that we talked about, which is the poor enforcement of the law. And there is discriminatory treatment of rich and poor people when they break the law. I mean, all this encourages people to basically look for ways to get money quickly because they think money can buy a lot of things.
Can it?
Well, it goes a long way before you get busted here. And, we talked earlier about the lack of accountability shown by people in power. Again, that doesn't help with the cause of fighting corruption.
So can people trust the police who are in power?
Can people, you're talking ordinary people?
Yes. Because most people who live here, Thai or otherwise, have to deal with Thai police at some point in their day-to-day life, and it's corrupt.
I would say, well, put it this way, let's be scientific about it. There are constant polls showing the respect people have for various occupations, and what we find is right at the bottom would be politicians and police.
Do you trust Thai police?
Not all of them. There are good ones, but I think there is a systemic problem too, where even I think the lower ranking officials often blame because they're the ones collecting money from ordinary people. But if you look at it, they don't hold on to that money. They give it to their superiors. So there's something systemic about it. But I was saying that the police and politicians compete for this. I think now the monks are doing the same. So.
In the past years, you've said that independent media and free press are an important function of checks and balances in a democracy. However, many view your legacy as anti-media, against free speech, and at times using censorship to hold on to power.
How so? Because during my time, we tried to provide space for the opposition to have access to the media, which is almost unlike any other government. I think the only time when there was censorship of the media was when, during the final day of the protests, when people were setting fire to a number of places, and we needed to stop them communicating to allow people who wanted to burn things down to go and join those cases. But apart from that, you can ask members of the media. What I tried to do was also to pass a legislation to allow for self-monitoring by the media and media councils on media issues.
So you don't feel that you've had any issue with, for example, using emergency decree, which effectively shutters a lot of the media's ability to...
Well, no, because when you announce a state of emergency, which I did in circumstances that I think most cities or most countries would have done the same, given what was going on the ground. But it didn't necessarily mean that all the powers that are accorded to you from the emergency decree would then be used. We just have to have specific provisions to prevent certain actions from happening. And you will certainly see that during my government, there was no shortage of criticisms in the media. And it was something that I, throughout my political career, have always been comfortable with because I think it's part of a vibrant democracy.
So, in terms of leadership, then,
Compared to when I was opposition leader and I was kept out of the media, that never happened when I was in power.
so I want to know where you draw the line then, because you successfully sued a protest leader for defamation, which eventually he was convicted of. Why did you do that?
Well, because he was spreading untrue things that were very, very damaging, not just to my reputation, but also to the situation, which basically led to instability and hatred. And so it was the only way for me to defend what the truth was.
Was it not free speech?
Well, when you say free speech, and this is interesting because even today around countries that are considered free, they do not allow speeches that incite violence and in certain cases hatred too. But that's a thin line where people will debate. But in my case, I just followed the law. And I never ever used any kind of intimidation against the media.
Is a SLAPP suit not intimidation?
No, it's quite normal for politicians to sue one another. In fact, none of them was sued as media.
No, you sued a protest leader.
Who was a politician? Who was a politician? They're all politicians. They were MPs. So I had to defend myself, and those are the only rights that I used. And I never ever use any kind of power to intimidate and stop people from making criticisms if they were based on facts or honest opinions.
But if you disagree with it, if you disagree that that's a fact, then you believe that it could be subject to legal ramifications.
Right, and I know some people say it shouldn't be a criminal offense, but then it's odd in a way, because then that's based on the idea that somehow you value people's reputations differently. So a rich man can sue for more.
Yes.
I think that's unfair. In my case, when you have billionaires financing people to spread misinformation about me, what can I do? They're willing to pay any kind of fines just to do it. So, I did it. I never actually asked for any money. I could have done, but all I wanted was to establish the truth.
Okay, so considering the evolving media landscape since the time that you were in office to now, and especially the rise of more social media, do you believe that you could win popular support nowadays?
It's going to be difficult, but when you talked about the possibility of me returning to the Democrats, I talked to people who are, I guess, like-minded. We might want to go and rejoin the Democrats, only because we felt that the Democrat Party is quite unique in a sense that it never belonged to anybody. It is a group of politicians that come together under some common belief. That had been thrown away in recent years. We wanted to get that back and hope that there will be future generations that will come and take this on and move it forward. And, people keep asking why I don't decide to, form a new party or whatever. Because I'm a believer in the need to have continuity of parties for accountability. And I don't want a party to be a personal vehicle. Now, for me, given the long history that I've been and the position that I had been in, it's going to be difficult for me to form a party that has a separate identity from myself. It's not something I wanted to do.
Now, with some more clarity around the issue of defamation, could you say for certain that if you return to politics and you have to face this current media landscape, that you wouldn't sue your critics?
I've never sued anybody in the media, except for them to provide evidence about what is being said about me, and then I just let them go. It's always against...
It's not about suing the media. I'm talking about people who would be critical of you.
Yeah.
Would you sue them?
Why would I sue them? Because I've never sued people in the media criticizing me.
You sued a protest leader for making a speech.
For a politician.
So you don't see him as a protest leader?
Well, he's a politician that became a protester.
Okay, so you will only sue politicians.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Basically, yes.
Okay. Understand.
And as I said, compared to the kind of intimidation that the media and the opposition face during the times of other governments, I can definitely say that during my time, we were tolerant of the criticisms leveled at us from the media.
Okay. You left politics officially 6 years ago, yet you're only 60 and you have a lot of options in front of you. Are you becoming a politician again or not?
No, I'm not actively involved, but because people often ask for my opinions, and my belief has always been that you can always contribute to the political process and to the country by expressing what you think are valuable opinions. Whether people agree with you is another matter, but it's a viewpoint that I think is worth putting out there. It doesn't mean I have to get back or re-enter politics.
I can't let you off the hook this way. I'm just curious because everyone is asking me, is he coming back or is he not coming back?
Well, I think look, I can be as clear as possible. I have said categorically, I'm not going to form a new party. It's unthinkable for me to join any other party.
Okay.
So the only way back for me into politics would be through becoming a leader or an important member of the Democrats. It's out of my hands. That's why I cannot say what I will or will not do, because it depends on how the party evolves and whether that creates an opportunity for me to get back in, to get involved.
But you're open to various different things, not just being like in the party, like, for example, geopolitical negotiations or diplomatic roles, these types of things.
Oh, you classify that as re-entering politics?
Yeah. Because those things have an impact on the political situation.
No, I'm happy in terms of having a platform here and there, whether it's domestic or international, to express my views. I don't need to have a position to do the things that you said that I could do. Partly because, frankly speaking, I still see many of the international organizations and multilateral organizations as rather too weak to achieve much, unless somehow the world changes. And if anything, it's changed for the worse in that respect.
Is it safe to say that it's quite possible that you'll try to save the Democrat Party?
If I could, I would, because I think I am indebted to the Democrat Party for my political career, for my career as a whole. And we have a lot of attachment to the party. We, meaning all the people who've left the party, would like to see the party return. So yes, if we had a chance to save the party, we'd do our best to try.
Okay. And lastly, what is something that you think people should know right now?
I think they need to know that the country cannot go on and on the way we've been going about things for quite some time now. That we need to face up to difficult issues, that we need to be, and I mentioned this before, more patient and tolerant of differing views, so that we find a middle ground, which I'm confident is there as an answer for most people on almost all issues. I want them to open up their minds and look at the possibilities and choices, and hopefully that we can all take this country forward.
And what about the group of people who feels that their voice has been lost in all of this?
Well, we should provide, as I say, space and platform for all voices to be heard. And hopefully that they will use that space in a respectful Thai ways, that we can then find, the right solutions for all of us and for a sustainable future.
Okay. Well, Mr. Prime Minister, that is my interview. Thank you very much for your time. Okay.